unparalleled design, sleek innovation, comfort and destruction in the palm of your hand. Militech Arms International. Don't be a sheep. Take matters into your own weaponized cyber hands. Originally founded under the name Armatech Lucchesi, the global megacorp of 2077 found its beginnings at the hands of a visionary genius. Antonio Lucchesi, an Italian weapons designer and engineer, founded the company in 1996 to moderate success in the European region. In 1998, Lucchesi took his product and applied for a US weapons trial. The US was in the process of replacing their standard assault rifle systems for their military, as their old standard had become increasingly unreliable and dangerous to use. Compared to the other two competitors in the trial, Armatech offered a reliable and affordable weapon. Lucchesi had a talent for design and quality that appealed to many, most notably General Donald Lundy, a member of the Joint Chiefs in charge of the trial. Unfortunately, the US was still in shambles due to the economic collapse it faced in 1994. Their military budget had been severely reined in, and they were forced to cut corners in an effort to remain competitive on the world stage. Due to this, the trials settled on the cheapest option, and Lucchesi's design, the clear best of the three, was put aside. This decision would be more costly than anticipated, as just 6 years later, the chosen FN-SAP weapon system would fail miserably in the Second South American conflict. Thousands of American soldiers would see their end in the jungles as their weapons faltered and fell apart in the tropical climate. General Lundy would find himself resigning his position within the Marines and joining Lucchesi. The two men had become well acquainted during the trial, and Lundy held a deep admiration for the product Lucchesi had to offer. In turn, Lucchesi saw Lundy as a well-informed man who could bring his company into the forefront of the military world, and so he offered Lundy the position of CEO within Armatech. Lundy accepted, and the two men set off to grow their company together. Lundy had a deep understanding of the military-industrial complex. It was clear to him that many of the established military contractors had become obsolete in their process. Bureaucracy and politics slowed down any chance of progress, and contracts were only being made through sheer contractual inertia and cost-cutting. The general saw this time as an opportunity for a streamlined system that offered quality military products at competitive prices. He envisioned a corporation that would operate anywhere in the world without the restrictions of politics or governmental agendas. His vision provided a path, and with Lucchesi's talent for design and innovation, the two men were able to gain the necessary corporate funding to allow Armatech to flourish. Now under the name of Militech Arms International, the corporation returned to the US in 2004. After the disasters seen in Central America, the US rightfully decided to scrap the cheap SAP system and replace it with a more reliable option. New trials were held, and Militech's Ronin light assault rifle came away victorious. This success was followed by Militech winning the US sidearm contract, making them the primary provider of weapons for the United States Armed Forces. With this mark under their name, Militech was able to sell weapons across the globe to nations and private corporations alike. Simultaneously, they began to expand their catalog, adding heavy artillery, vehicles, and aircrafts to the roster. The excellent quality and competitive prices that Militech offered allowed them to rise among the already established contractors by leaps and bounds. By the 2010s, the one small company had become the largest contractor in the US, as well as with many other nations and privately owned companies. With this triumph came the ability to purchase several competitors, further expanding their roster with new designs. In 2022, Militech was hired as the primary military security for OTEC, a megacorporation that was in the midst of a brutal conflict with a competitor. In response, Sino, their competitor, hired Arasaka to stand in opposition. Both Militech and Arasaka had been competing for contracts for years, and this rivalry would see their conflict reach a new level of aggression. The full-scale war officially began when Militech and Arasaka decided that covert assaults and false politeness would no longer be enough. Hostilities rose to such a degree that government started to get involved in an attempt to subdue the two military monsters. Arasaka faced heavy pressure from Japan, while Militech found itself under the unforgiving gaze of the NUSA. The final blow came with a nuke attack on the Arasaka headquarters in Night City. Though it was never publicly acknowledged, it is fairly well known that it was Militech that funded the covert strike. The attack forced Arasaka to surrender their position in the US and return to Japan. Militech did not win, however, as this act would cost them dearly. After the bombing, the US President Elizabeth Kress put the remaining parts of the country into a state of martial law. The bombing was blamed on the Arasaka by way of marking them as a perpetual enemy, and Militech was absorbed into the US defense program. Many of those that held a position on the board of directors within Militech were offered high-ranking positions within the US military. This allowed Kress to keep Militech under her direct command, slapping a short leash on the megacorp. The war with Arasaka had cost the corporation much of their wealth and resources. Forced to lick their wounds and now under the watchful eye of the US, Militech began to slowly and secretly recoup their losses and regain their foothold on the world market. They were still the primary manufacturer of supplies for the US military, which worked greatly in their favor. Aside from this, they still supplied many independent clients in sovereign nations across the world. Due to the fierce determination of Lundy, Militech put themselves once again on the world stage. By 2050, they had reached a comfortable position as one of the biggest megacorps on the planet. Lundy himself still held a position of power as one of the chairmen. He was still driven to pursue and destroy his enemy in the Arasaka. Years of conflict between the two had bred a powerful personal hatred between Lundy and Saburo, and each man was determined to take the other down. Though his fierce and single-minded nature had served him well in rebuilding Militech, Lundy became obsessed with the idea of victory over his Japanese counterpart. He would have put all of Militech into this task, had he not been overruled by the majority shareholders on the board of directors. Still, Militech and Arasaka remained bitter rivals well into the 2070s. In 2077, Militech is considered one of the largest and most influential manufacturer of military goods in the world. They supply most of the NUSA weapons and vehicles and even arm much of the police and civilian forces in the country. Aside from their public dealings, rumors speak of Militech as a company deep in the bowels of the underground, funding political assassinations, civil war, and even ethnic cleansings across the world. The megacorporation is by no means pure or devout in its actions. Much is to be expected of Militech, and with the biochip with the power to change the world now in the brain of a mercenary for hire, they are sure to stop at nothing to gain the upper hand.